I want to welcome the opportunity to speak on the revised estimates myself, and Sinn Féin will support the revised estimates. We're in a situation where entire sectors of the economy are at risk of failure if the state doesn't provide adequate supports and incentives for SMEs, and that's the truth of the matter. And I don't mean to say that it will happen. If the state and other stakeholders do their bit, there's no reason that it should. But given the current level of support on offer from this government, it is a real danger. There have been a number of schemes introduced since the crisis began. Some of them have been more successful than others. Only one COVID-specific grant scheme has come on board, unfortunately, and we all know that businesses are struggling with the low level of grant funding, which is estimated by IBEC to be an average of €3,000 per firm. On the revised estimates, the additional €483 million for enterprise supports falls entirely within Programme A, Jobs and Enterprise Development. The vast majority of that is going to Enterprise Ireland. It doubles the allocation which previously had been made under this heading. But given the disaster we are in and the scale of it, it's an extremely low allocation. The main allocation under this heading is the Sustaining Enterprise Fund, €180 million, and the Restart Fund of €250 million. That's €430 million. The remainder appears to be providing additional funding to Microfinance Ireland, the Future Growth Loan Scheme and local enterprise development. One question I have that you might be able to answer at the end is around the business continuity vouchers. I received a PQ response a number of weeks ago from the former Minister, Heather Humphreys, and it was made clear that the business continuity vouchers were to be closed. Does this allocation of €27 million in these estimates mean that they will reopen, or is that the money that has already been spent and the scheme will remain closed? I had assumed that these figures would be much higher. Does this mean that the government doesn't expect increased funding under the Restart grants? Once the €250 million is gone, will the scheme close? What about the July stimulus? Are you expecting to have a supplementary estimate later in the year to accommodate that? Or should we be worried that there will be very little exchequer funding allocated under that plan? We know what's needed. We've been saying it since the crisis began. We need grant aid for businesses, and those who are in a position to borrow, we need interest-free loans. We also need options for businesses to deal with rent and other debt. None of these matters have been adequately addressed. The same issues that were there from day one are still there. There has been no sense of urgency from the government to address them. We welcome the wage subsidy scheme and the PUP that the Department of Social Protection introduced, and the introduction of some loan options, the Restart grant and the rates freeze. But these should have been initial steps. This is simply not enough at this stage of the crisis. Some practical measures were introduced by government, the Restart grant, as I said, and the rates freeze. And I'll speak shortly about issues around the Restart grants, but we need clarity on a further suspension of rates, in particular for sectors that will not be recovering anytime soon. And these are a good start, but we need to build on this and introduce further measures. Additional grant aid targeted at specific sectors, interest-free loans, measures to manage debt and rent, and ways to stimulate growth and development. The government might consider Sinn Féin's proposal for the tourism and hospitality sector as a start. We also put forward ideas for grants and loans to the Minister for Business and Finance. What businesses need is very, very clear, and we look at the Department's loan tracker. The number of enterprises availing of these loans is worryingly low. COVID-19 Working Capital Scheme, only 584 loans sanctioned. COVID-19 loan, only 581 loans sanctioned. Sustaining Enterprise Fund, 6. Grants, unsurprisingly, have had a stronger uptake. Restart grants, 9,754 sanctioned. Business Continuity Voucher, 10,642. And the Trading Online Voucher, 3,218. So if we want to genuinely support businesses, we need more grants and interest-free, easy-to-apply for loans. The uptake figures there speak for themselves. And I hope that this is reflected in the July stimulus plan. If it's more of the same approach, then businesses, I fear, may be in real trouble. Loans that have interest rates that are a percentage point or two below what they were in February isn't going to save Irish SMEs. They need grant aid. Then we need loans without interest, which thankfully we are in a position to provide at this time due to the low cost of borrowing and changes to state aid rules. Grants will obviously cost the state significantly, there's no one saying otherwise, but it's not money down the drain. It's an investment in our future, and it's long overdue. It's high time that Irish SMEs were prioritised by government. Giving grants to SMEs at this time will save us money in the long term. People can stay in their jobs, businesses will be able to diversify, communities and town centres will be supported. And if we don't provide grants, businesses will fail, people will lose their job, and there will be a knock-on effect on other businesses and other sectors that we know are already in dire straits. Every business group has said this. We know this. The only group that isn't on board, it appears, seems to be the government. So will the Taoiseach clarify what businesses can expect to be announced in the July stimulus package? There's been so much uncertainty in recent months. They need to plan. They need to know what's going on. Other countries have provided much more comprehensive support for businesses from the very beginning of the crisis. Germany and Britain had much higher loan and grant amounts available to ensure that businesses maintained liquidity. In Germany, businesses with up to 10 employees were eligible for grants up to 15,000. Up the road in the north, the average available to businesses is between €10,000 and €25,000 in grant aid, depending on the type of business. The average grant received by Irish businesses is €3,000, paltry in comparison, and there's only one COVID-specific scheme available, and it's clearly not enough. Goodbody have estimated that Ireland has given out 95 million in liquidity supports, where Britain has given out 41 billion. If you scale the British supports to Ireland, that would be 4.5 billion. That would be 4.5 times more than the government are currently offering. I've spoken on numerous occasions about the problem with the Restart grants. Badly designed, underfunded. We need to end the rate links that bar so many other people from applying, and we need to ensure that those most in need are given the best chance of survival, and we need much more in the pot than 250 million. Other issues we need to address are loans and debt. Will the government make provision for interest-free loans for small businesses, or will the profit of banks continue to be a priority for the new government? What plans has the government to address the matter of debt? Businesses are still accumulating debt and have been doing so since March. Last week, IBEC estimated that the average Irish SME has run up debts of 50,000 during lockdown. Some of this is owed to banks and large corporate landlords, groups that might have to take a hit in light of the current situation. But much of this debt will be owed to other small businesses, so the knock-on effects of this could be catastrophic. Businesses need a support plan for this now. Can the Taoiseach confirm that the Central Bank and Government are formulating a plan of this type, which does not rely on the state to step in and take on the debts of major landlords and banks and other large profit-making entities? Will the Government consider getting rid of tax breaks and loopholes provided for CEOs of multinationals and multinationals themselves in order to free up spending for small businesses? We need to see a radical shift in how the state interacts with SMEs. It can't be piecemeal. If we are to recognise the importance of SMEs in terms of our economy, employment and our communities, then we must shift the balance from kowtowing to FDI and focus on investing in SMEs for the duration of this government. In terms of cost, we need to be strategic. Blanket measures were initially implemented by government in terms of supports. This was appropriate at the time, but now we have a clearer idea of what is needed and we can be more strategic. Not every sector suffered. Some need more help than others. and we need to treat sectors according to their need. We can't give up on vulnerable sectors. We keep hearing about the new normal. Well, this has to include a changed attitude towards how we deal with SMEs, and the state re-evaluating how banks, corporate landlords and multinationals are put on a pedestal and cannot be interfered with in terms of their profits. We need an entire systems change where the state will intervene in private business for the betterment of the economy. It won't cost the state money, but the benefit for SMEs will be enormous. The state should be able to instruct banks and landlords to take action that might interfere with their profits in the short term, but will ensure the state's economy can benefit as businesses stay open, jobs are saved and local economies are protected. The time for asking them nicely is long over. We don't think that the state should step in and write a blank cheque. Nobody's saying that. We are just asking that everyone takes their fair share of the burden. Certain interest groups are always protected by the state, but this time they're going to have to do their bit. The state should invest in business in a targeted and strategic way, and that way we'll reap the rewards for the economy generally. So if the Taoiseach, if I have time, if the Taoiseach can answer just a couple of questions, perhaps I'll give over time, and it's in relation to the new grants. Have the government plans for new grants, and will he ensure that the groups that are excluded for arbitrary reasons will be included? And will there be more than 250 million allocated for restart grants, because that money is clearly not enough? And will a debt management plan be included in the July stimulus? Thanks, Cathaoirleach.